Hello and good evening, everybody. Welcome to another Thursday Talk, where this time I'm gonna go over my mission experience. Have you ever had the opportunity of traveling to another country and doing good, whether it be medical help, digging wells, or whatnot? Ever been coerced by a church member to just do a mission? Well, if you had your doubts, maybe I can help you by telling you a little bit about my experiences when I went to a mission trip in Nicaragua. That was way back in July of 2012. Normally, I would start this story from like the beginning of the month leading up to it, but again, uh, Instagram Live 1 hour cut off. There's a lot I can say about this trip, so I don't want to waste too much time. This is also not a message, it's not a sermon, so I'm not gonna start off with a prayer this time, and that is why, in case you're wondering. So, with that said, what was my mission trip like? Well, it was 8 years ago, so it's a little fuzzy, but I remember. So, as you all know, I am a very shy person, and I know I say this a lot. I am extremely shy. So, just the thought of me going to another country and hanging out with basically 31 other strangers, as you can kind of see them over there. Yeah, that was a big deal for me, and mentally, that was like, I'm not gonna have none of my safety net, no privacy corner. It was just crazy, and also I'm a fear of flying, so there's that. So I remember getting to the airport and meeting up with these, I believe there were 4 teenagers who were also going on a trip. They weren't gonna go on a trip with me, but they were leaving to the same airport to go to the same country, Nicaragua, for a mission trip. So I met up with them because apparently their parents found out I was going. And, as we left together, the parents were like, watch. I should mention, I was an adult. I was 24 years old at this point, and I knew Spanish, and we were going to Nicaragua, so that's helpful. So the parents were just happy that at least on the, upon arrival, they were going to be with an adult, like an official chaperone. So that was fun. We had fun. We got to Miami, and then we were at the Miami airport where we're waiting. And we kind of split up for lunch, and then we got back together, and then we got to Nicaragua. And the first thing that I noticed when I got to Nicaragua, or at least when we're arriving, when the airplane is going down, is that there was just this massive ocean of rusted roof, like rusted sheet metal roofs. It was like, I know people use sheet metal as roofs, but it was visually impressive. That just kind of makes you realize, what did I get myself into? And then as we're leaving the airport and we're heading to our first stop, which was this boarding school, we were all in an American-style school bus. And it was weaving in and out of traffic, and it was crazy just how quickly it would merge. The bus driver would just hit like the horn, like beep, 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 and then we just swerve. And the whole time I'm just praying, like, dear Lord, please don't let me die before the mission trip even begins. So yeah, you oftentimes hear that people say, oh, driving in New York is crazy. No, you don't know nothing. Like, American driving is good compared to what they do in other countries. And I'm not saying that to like bash other countries. I'm just saying my heart was in my hand the whole time. So again, to go through it very quickly, I'm at the completely lost my train of thought here. So I'm at the boarding school. We had to spend our first night there before being shipped to our sites. So I'm spending the night sleeping in this tiny little room, when in the middle of the night I start hearing this noise, and I open my eyes, and there is a cow's head like 3 feet away from mine. And I'm like half asleep, so I'm like, what on earth is going on? This turns out the cows were curious about us, the mission trippers, so they stuck their hole through the window. And that was something. But that wasn't even the beginning, right? The next morning we wake up bright and early, and there's a lot of commotion because we were now the group that was leaving, right? We were, I think, group 2 that was being shipped out. And so basically all the friends that I made on day 1, I wasn't going to hang out with, which was kind of weird because, again, I'm shy and it's hard for me to make friends. And I really made a lot of friends on that first day, but none of them would stick around with me. But before I get to me leaving, the first day we had a service together. I remember that. All the groups got together and they had this very camp-like service where everybody was happy and singing and had like all these smiles. The part of me was like, why you guys got these fake smiles on? Nobody's that happy. In retrospect, I take that back. Mission trips are fun, but I didn't realize that because this was my first time going. But yeah, there were all these happy songs that I never heard of, and I'm just thinking to myself, what did I get myself into? So anyways, day 2, it's in the morning, we're getting on a bus, and we're just leaving. And this bus was packed. All 32 of us were not only squished in there, but all our luggage was there, and it was like a 10-hour drive. So yeah, we had to get chummy with each other. And some people didn't even have seats on the bus, so they had to sit in the little aisle. And yeah, so I luckily had a seat. Unfortunately, I had to sit with someone else, or someone else was sitting next to me. I had the window seat, and so this person was a social butterfly and wouldn't stop talking and asking me questions. And I'm shy, and part of me was like, this person needs to stop because I think I've had enough. So I pretend to fall asleep on the bus so that they wouldn't talk to me anymore. And then I actually did fall asleep. And when I wake up, I realize that the person next to me fell asleep using my shoulder as a pillow. And I'm just thinking to myself, no, I'm not okay with this. I'm not okay with this. But then I realized if I wake them up, they're just going to talk to me again. Okay, so what was the sights like? It was impressive because, again, the city, when we first arrived in Nicaragua, the city was okay-ish, right? It was, yeah, there was some poverty, but it wasn't a big deal. When we're arriving towards the boarding school, right, we take this left, and I'll never forget it because we went from like okay city to just sheer slum. And it was amazing how a terribly poor place was next to this populated place. But I guess that's just how the world lives. There were these kids walking around burning garbage, and they had very little clothes on, and it was just heartbreaking. But anyways, that's not where we were going. We were going to this region of Huaslala Central, which is in the jungle. And I was thinking jungle like Tarzan, right? But when I get there, it was less Tarzan-ish and more Disney's Animal Kingdom, which makes sense because this Animal Kingdom is supposed to, among many other things, represent the jungle. But I didn't think the jungle actually looked like that. And let me tell you, it does. So yeah, we get there, and when the bus stops, it starts raining, and we had to unpack the bus because the bus driver had to go. So we were running and moving furniture up and down the rain, and it was crazy. And we huddled inside this church because that is where we're gonna be staying. So we realized that we couldn't set up our tents outside in the middle of the rain. So at least for that night, we were gonna stay in the church, and overall that ended up being the arrangement. We were gonna stay in the church the whole time. It was just safer than to being out in the open. So yes, so we ended up spending a lot of time sleeping inside that church. Let me tell you about the food. When we first got there and we had our first meal at the boarding school, they gave us this very nice looking meal of white rice, black beans, some salsa, and some fried cheese, which, you know, it was good. It wasn't my personal cup of tea, but it was good. So when we get to the jungle, they give us a dinner of white rice, black beans, and fried cheese, which I thought, oh, okay, right? So we have our first service that night, and then we went to sleep. It turns out not everybody brought a tent, so we had to share tents. And so I ended up sharing a tent with, I think, 2 other guys or 3 other guys, and it was a small tent, so it was too close for comfort. Too close for comfort. And then, it wasn't working out. After a few nights, I decided I was just gonna sleep on the church pews rather than sleeping in my own tent that I brought from home. Then there was the bathroom situation. We actually had to use outhouses, right? Latrines. And let me tell you, they're not fun. Not fun at all. I should probably move because I got some stuff back here. So yeah, the outhouses, they stank. And the more we use them, the more they stank. And that is just logical. That is how life works. It took some getting used to. And it's not something that I recommend to everybody, but trust me, after a while, you start developing like a resistance towards it. Like it's still terrible, but you don't mind as much. And then you feel like a bow because I'm like, yeah, rugged outback man in an outhouse. Yeah. But anyways, let's get to the actual point of all of this, which was the mission trip. Well, I didn't know what I was going to expect, except we are going to be building churches. Now it's a good time to mention. I went with Maranatha Volunteers International. So I knew about the one-day churches, and I thought that is what we were going to be doing the whole time, putting up churches and laying brick. As it turns out, no bricks. Just put up the structure, and most of what we did was Vacation Bible School, which is interesting because I kind of went there to get away from doing Vacation Bible School at my church, and they had me working with children. Again, I'll never forget that the first time working VBS when I asked, what's the plan? And they just gave me the name of the store, which I believe was Daniel. No, I think it was Noah. I don't remember. It was a biblical story. So I'm like, yeah, but what's the plan? And they look at me like, oh, we don't have a plan. We have to come up with the plan right now. And I'm like, yeah, we got 2 hours. There's no way we're going to get it done. Like, I've been working with children for a while. You got to prepare ahead. And lo and behold, they pulled it off, not only that day, but every other day. And that taught me a lesson that a positive attitude can change everything. Every morning we would show up with no clue of what to do for Vacation Bible School. And every day we actually had a program. And that was amazing, again, because to me, I usually plan months in advance. And this was just mind-blowing to me. Like, what do you mean you guys show up with nothing and we're going to all come up with it together? So there's that. Another thing I want to talk about is the language, right? They speak Spanish over there. And in our group of 32 people, there were only 8 of us that spoke Spanish. That means that for every 4 of us, 1 spoke Spanish. And not everybody wanted to serve as a translator. Now, originally I said, don't use me as a translator. But once they asked me over there in person, I couldn't say no. And so I ended up having 5 people that I was translating for that tagged along everywhere. And again, I am extremely shy. So not only was I semi-uncomfortable around the 5 people, but then there was the people that I had to translate, and some of the translating made sense, but oftentimes it was just people trying to make friends with the locals and using me as a translator. So I had to be social when I don't have a social bone in my body. So that happened, and at one point, one guy is trying to flirt with one of the local girls, using me as a translator, and I'm like, nope, I'm not doing this. I'm out. And he just walked out. I'm like, find someone. I'm not gonna do it. I'm not gonna drop your lines on for no. This is a Christian camp. Well, actually, it was a mission trip for college age individuals. So that there was that. Every morning and every night we would have a devotional and a service, and it was different each time. And I liked it because, much like the Vacation Bible School, there were no thrills, no frills. It was often us huddled around a tiny lamp or during breakfast and just being real, right? The messages weren't long, and they weren't these amazing messages that I would, put online. But there was a certain sincerity in them, which I personally feel was missed. Over here we have the songbook, and that was another thing. They use songs from this book very often, and I haven't heard of any of these songs. I mean, there were some that we sang over there, but I don't know. Most of these are camp songs. I'd never been to camp before, so there's that. For the first time ever, I heard Baby Shark while I was at the mission trip. And I know what you're thinking. Everybody knows Baby Shark. Yes, but everybody knows Baby Shark now. We didn't know Baby Shark back then. So when Baby Shark became popular over here years later, I was like, oh, this song of all songs. But yeah. Wildlife. People always ask me, what wildlife did I see over there? And honestly, not a whole lot. There were these green parrot-like creatures that lived up in the treetops, but they were high, so we could barely see them. I saw one up close because a local had tamed it. And what else? There were chickens, dogs, and pigs that just roamed around free. I don't know if they had owners. They probably didn't. Some of the dogs were very sickly and were missing fur and had flea. And let's see, lizards. There was tons of tree lizards and a bunch of insects roaming around. But other than that, there really wasn't anything too amazing. Oh, one day at a river, we got surrounded by killer bees, which I thought I was gonna die. And once again, I'm praying like, Lord, please save me from the killer bees. And luckily, nobody got stung. Later, a bee expert told me that we were never in danger because of some reason or another. I don't even know. I'm not a bee expert. I'm not going to pretend to be a bee expert. Overall, how was the experience? Me, as a shy person, having to hang out with 32 or 31 strangers and work with them, have a devotional with them, be a team player with them. And yeah, it was tough on me, but I also loved it. A lot of them I became very close, and we became like BFFs for a while, and others just felt like family to me. But not everybody in the group I ended up being close with or even speaking with. So some of them I left, and they were just straight up strangers to me. But again, I am shy, so keep that in mind. The translating was also very, very tough on me, and I tried to avoid it. At one point, they were asking people to like participate in the local church service, and everybody looked at me, and I was like, I mean, if you can't find anybody else, I'll do it, but I don't want to do it, no. And then they found someone else. At one point, a camera crew showed up from Maranatha Mission Stories, and we actually made it to episode 311, called A New Direction, and there's a very small segment of it on it where we are showcased. And if you are an eagle-eyed viewer, you can see me, but you probably won't because you don't know what to look for. But I was in there, trust me. I always tell people, if you squint, you can see me in the background right there. So yeah, when the camera crew showed up, everybody like wanted to be center stage, and everybody wanted to participate a lot more than they normally did, which was good for me because it meant that I would not have to do stuff. But it also kind of made me feel like, well, wait a minute. Normally I do this stuff. I deserve recognition. But nah, it was cool. It was cool. Over here we have a Bible, which I brought. It was a white Bible, and I had everybody sign it. Well, not everybody, but I had most people sign it, and then I closed it up, and I never used it since because I just thought it was a cool thing to have a Bible that everybody signed. Over here we see my camp plate combo that I used to eat my meals every day. Oh yeah, I never finished the meals part. So pretty much white rice, black beans, and fried cheese every day for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Usually little exceptions to that rule. That also surprised me when I woke up for breakfast and it was the same food over and over again. But there was always something else extra, like fruit or salad or chips or oatmeal. And so eventually I realized I don't have to eat the white rice and stuff every day. And that was important because after a while I got really sick and tired of the food. Like I was like, no. And that's weird because before I went to the trip, I knew that something that I should never do when traveling abroad is disrespect the food of the locals. So I had set up in my head that no matter what, I'm going to eat it, and I'm going to put a smile on my face, and I'm going to be grateful. And so I went over there, and I was tired, but I'm like, you got to be grateful. Don't let them know. Don't let them see you that you're tired. So I always smile, and I always thank them. And then one day, everybody decided, well, not everybody, most people in the group decided that they were going to skip dinner and just eat at, like, I want to say a restaurant. It wasn't really a restaurant. It was some lady's house that sold food. But yeah, technically a restaurant. And they was gonna go over there and eat, and they invited me, but I was like, no, we can't do this, right? I knew like don't disrespect the food. So I decided to stay, and I think out of the 32 of us, only 6 of us stayed. And the ladies who make our food, they were very sad because they felt disrespect. They were crying like, do they not like their food? So in order to make them feel better, we all had, seconds and thirds, and we ate extra, which again, I really didn't want to, but I had to. Because we had to show that Christ-like compassion. And when our coordinator found out about the group, she was not very happy, and she reprimanded all of them when they got back, and then they went and they apologized. And yeah, the whole thing was if we wanted to do it, that was fine. We just had to let them know. Another thing that was interesting. Oh yeah, the day we went to the river, the day we got surrounded by killer bees, the locals decided to throw us a picnic, an American style picnic, and boy did they get it wrong. I mean, I guess it's kind of like how Taco Bell isn't really Mexican food. Well, they made us a picnic that's not really American food, but it kind of looks like American food, if you get what I'm saying, right? They had potato salad, which was one of the weirdest potato salads I've ever seen. And then they had sandwich bread, like white sandwich bread with some weird sauce on it, which was McCormick brand sandwich spread. Now, I've never heard of sandwich spread, but it was actually written in English, sandwich spread, even though everything else on the label was Spanish. And I was like, what is this? I read the ingredients. I thought it was pimento cheese, but it turns out it's not. My sandwich spread is something that's very popular in Latin American countries, even though it has an English sounded name and nobody eats it over here. So yeah, we ate that, and and we drank and we washed it all down with Fresca, that soda that you probably seen at the dollar store. So yeah, it was a nice break of the white rice, black beans, and so forth. But that happened. And speaking of soda, the water over there is not very good quality, so we had to drink soda pretty much every day, which sounds great. It's not. We had to brush our teeth with 7. No, that was not fun. That was not fun at all. Showering was another thing. We had to use bucket showers, which, no hot water, no cold water. Just take a bowl, put cold water over you, and that was it. And after a few days, the water barrel was getting like mildew on top, and that was not no, it's just no. But I think the important thing is, what was it like? Is it something that I recommend? Yes, I do, and not for the usual reasons. Right? Most people usually go off on oh my gosh, it changed my life. I've never been the same. I can't really say that, but it was a learning experience, and it was, I would say it was beautiful. It was amazing. I couldn't stop smiling for like 3 days after I got back, and that brings it back to the beginning when we were having a service, and I was like, why are these people so happy? Nobody should be happy. That's why I take it back, because I was very happy, and I would go every year if I could afford it. I can't, unfortunately. Also, I'm kind of too old. Well, I mean, I'm not too old to go on a mission trip, just too old to go on a mission trip for the young people, if you get what I'm saying. But yeah, I recommend it. You go out of your element and you're put in a situation where you are broken down and you build yourself back up, or at least hopefully you do. I did. And I don't know, it was very beautiful, because a lot of people, when they first showed up there, they were trying to pretend to be something they weren't, right? But after a few days, you couldn't pretend it anymore. Who you really were was out, and that was okay, because I feel like we all came to accept who we were, and that's important, because not everybody came from the same walk of life. Not everybody had the same way of thinking. Some were poor, some were rich, some were on the left, some were Democrats, some were Republicans, some had been to prison, others had not. And so I just thought it was very, very interesting. Oh yeah, some of us were older than, and a lot of them were fresh out of high school. They were all 18, but fresh out of high school, while others were in college. Some had finished college, and some were already in the workforce. So that was kind of weird, because for me personally, I had been working for a few years, and then I had to be hanging out with all these pimply-faced teenagers that kept making the kind of jokes that teenagers make. And I was just thinking to myself, like, I'm in high school again. I don't like high school. But then I remember, wait, I'm an adult. Just be the adult. They want to be high schoolers. They can be high schoolers. But I'm going to be an adult. And an adult I was. And I think the team appreciated me for it. Especially toward the end. They were all like, oh man, I want to be like you, and so forth. And that got to me, because I wasn't doing it for recognition, but it turns out I inspired others by standing my ground and not being a follower. That's another thing. I had long hair back then, and one day the team discovers this local barbershop, so they all decided to go out and get haircuts. All the guys did, and I'm a guy, so they wanted to cut my long hair, and I was like, no, you're not gonna get rid of this beautifulness. And everybody was trying to get me to cut it, so they couldn't. So then they got the girls to try to flirt with me to get me to cut the hair. And I was like, be gone. This is my hair. You cut your hair first, then we'll talk, okay? Then we'll talk. Now, eventually I did cut my hair. Just not during a trip. Not long during a trip. This trip is also how and why I always wear one of these hats. Man, I haven't worn this hat with this shirt in forever. Of course, I had long hair back then, but yeah, I wore this same hat with me the whole time I was there, and I liked it so much that when I came back, I kept wearing it, and then I just keep buying new hats. Over here is a wooden sculpture that I got from the Waslala region, and this is supposed to be the cacao pod, so where chocolate comes from. But this is, again, it's wood. But yeah, you would open it up and there would be some pods that you roast and you make chocolate, I think. I don't know anything about chocolate. So, some things that we did while we were over there. We went to the river. I already said that. Went to the river and we were surrounded by killer bees. We hiked the mountain, kind of. It wasn't like a huge mountain, but it was a mountain. We hiked it. And for someone with flat feet such as myself, that was brutal. I remember at one point, we had to jump. You know how in the movies they're like, oh no, you can jump the gap. Just run and make the jump. And I'm like, I am going to die. And even if I don't die, how dare you make me jump the gap? And I couldn't go back because I would be alone. And so I just ran and I jumped and my whole life flashed before my eyes. And then I landed on the other side and it was fine. And once we got up there, the view was absolutely amazing. By the way, I have a lot of videos of my time over there on YouTube. So if you guys are interested, I'll probably put the link in the description so you guys can watch that. But yeah, the view up there was amazing. And even though where we were, there was a lot of poverty, there was also a lot of beauty. We went to a volcano on the last day, and it was my first time going to a volcano, so I didn't know what to expect. Not that. It smelled like rotten eggs, and I remember we were walking along this trail, and it was windy, and the more we walked, the narrower the path got, and the windier it got, and at one point, I'm like, nope, I am not taking another step. I'm having an anxiety attack, mainly because I was afraid of heights. I'm like, I am not taking a single step forward. I'm going back. I don't want to die, because I looked to my left, and there was just this massive pit into another volcanic crater. And to my right, there was a very steep drop into the road below. So I'm like, nope, I am dying. Not tonight. Not tonight, because tomorrow I should be back home. So, yeah, that happened. What else? Yeah, there was a lot of experiences, a lot of adventure that I feel that I otherwise would not have been able to experience for myself. And but with the people that I met and that I spent time with, there are people that I otherwise wouldn't have spoken to, and places that I otherwise wouldn't have visited, and a diet that, again, I'm not disrespecting the food, but yeah, it made me appreciate the food I had back home so much more. And I remember the day before we left our site, one of the locals, they weren't Christian, but they had a store, and they had a corner store. And so the whole time we were there, we would purchase a lot of things from the corner store. So they were very grateful of all the business that we gave them. So they decided to have a feast for us. And that was such a nice gesture because, again, they weren't Christian, or at least they weren't Adventist. And they just decided that, oh, you guys just gave us so much, so let us throw you a feast. And I remember there were boiled eggs, and it was fried chicken, and I think it was like rice pudding, and a salad, and tamales. And it was first of all, it was a nice break from the same food we were eating every day, but it was such a nice thing because they didn't have to do that. And, sometimes we just touch people And that was amazing because to us, she was just a resource. Like she has a corner store that sells things that we can't get anywhere else. So yeah, I purchased a lot from her, but that was something. That was very nice. And we had I always forget how to say this in English. The Lord's Supper over there. It was improvised. We also did the feet washing, I believe. But it was improvised. We weren't going to have it, but because the lady threw a feast for us and she had the whole room, they decided that they were going to buy crackers. And it wasn't 100% grape juice. It was like grape drink. And we had a Lord's Supper. I know many of you are going to think like, that is a sacrilege. You shouldn't do that. Look, we couldn't have it any other way over there, so we either did it this way or we didn't do it at all. Again, I know a lot of you are going to feel like that was crossing the line. I personally feel that given the circumstances, it was okay. And honestly, I think that was the time when we did the Lord's Supper, the emblems, communion, whatever you want to call it. There was, out of all the times I've done it in my life, that one time, I feel it's the one that touched me the most. Like I actually felt like crying, like I was moved. And they got two of the team members who knew how to play guitar with us, and the music. I don't know, the whole thing. It was lit by candles. It's everything, and it was just us, the store owner, and the store owner's kids who were up there with us. They were our same age. So once again, translator Eli has to translate for the kids, and it was interesting because these kids were again not kids; they were the same age as us. These teenagers, they're just being teenagers and joking around and flirting and everything. And I have to translate everything. Hello, I'm almost wrapping up, but welcome. So yeah, I'm talking about my experience in a mission trip when I went to Nicaragua 8 years ago. So yes, so there was this really nice bonding experience. I did talk to the locals multiple times. I feel like this was the one time that we were just at ease, so to speak, and so that was a very nice experience. Earlier that same day, we were walking. Oh yeah, a wooden bench fell on this girl's toenail and it busted it and it was bleeding everywhere. So we didn't have our nurse with us at that moment. So everybody was freaking out that they didn't know what to do. And since I work at a school, they kind of teach us how to do first aid in these type of situations. So, and I always carry a first aid kit on me for that same reason. So when that happens and we don't have a nurse, everybody starts freaking out what to do. And I'm like, well, the first thing you need to do is disinfect the wound. You gotta grab some water, do this, da, da, da. And everybody starts listening to me. And then I just start handing them all the supplies. And after a while, they're like, dude, are you a nurse? I'm like, no, I don't do medical. This is ingrained into me because of my job at a elementary school. And so that happened. So then they were gonna walk her, but she couldn't walk, so some guy was gonna carry her. But it starts pouring like raining cats and dogs. So I hand them my umbrella and they walk out. But then, and as they're leaving, they're like, but now you're gonna get wet. And I'm like, no, I have my raincoat on me. And then everybody just turns their head looking at me. And they're like, you have a first aid kit, an umbrella, and a raincoat. And I'm like, yeah. And like, did you know this was gonna happen? And I'm like, no. And everybody's looking at me like, who carries an umbrella, a first aid kit, and a raincoat on them at all times? And I'm like, someone who wants to be prepared? That was hilarious. So as we were walking back, we kind of got separated. So I ended up alone with, I think, these 2 other girls or 3 other girls. And the rule was, if you're going to split up, always have at least one guy with you, because over there, women are more likely to be attacked if they're alone. So I had to stick with these 3 girls. And this is important because one of them had chocolate cravings and she wanted to find chocolate. And I'm like, we're in the middle of the jungle. We're not going to find chocolate. Here's where they make the chocolate. They harvest the cacao pods and they sell them so that you can have chocolate back home. There is no chocolate over here. But they were determined that they were gonna find the chocolate. And since over there are no real stores, stores are just knock on a window. They usually have a sign saying they sell stuff. So they would just knock on a window. Yeah, you guys sell chocolate? No. And so we kept doing that everywhere. And every now and then, when they saw what they were selling, they would start looking because I don't want to generalize, but women love to shop, right? Men, on the other hand, don't. So after what seemed like an eternity, I want to say it was an hour later, but it was probably like 15 minutes. I'm probably being exaggerating, right? Because I'm a guy. After an eternity later, I'm just sitting there. I'm like, did I really come to Central America just to go shopping with women? Like, what is this? What is my life coming to? And I was just extremely bored. I'm like, girl, you need to move, or I'm just gonna drag you because I can't deal with it. But no, they just kept staying on there forever and ever and ever. And then eventually, others from our group, it stopped raining by then. Others from our group come back looking for us because they thought something happened because we didn't report back to home base. And so they see us and they're like, what's going on? I'm like, they're shopping. They're like, oh, what are they looking for? I'm like, chocolate. They're like, oh yeah, they're not gonna find any chocolate. I'm like, that's what I told them. So they all laugh and then they stick with me for a few minutes. And eventually it becomes obvious that these girls are not hurrying up. So because others from the group, they had other guys in there, they're like, Eli, if you want, you can just go back to HQ and we'll stick with them. And I'm like, thank you. And then I walked away. So I remember that. That was very fun. And yeah, it's little things like this. You know, you help out the people in ways that you don't normally think. Like, I didn't think that me merely being there was helping, but it was. The two kids that played guitar, they blessed us that evening because I felt like crying. That was amazing. The last day that we spent there, we had a service at the church that we helped build that wasn't finished yet, but we had a service there, the inaugural service. And I remember because everything about it was just beautiful. It was hot and humid, but it was beautiful. And for the end, they invite us all to go up and to sing again. The team got invited by the local pastor for us to just sing. And I forgot what the song was. Was it Mighty to Save? I think it was Mighty to Save. And I had never sung that song before. So I was just following everybody. And halfway through the song, I just lose myself and I close my eyes and I just keep singing. And I just forgot about everything in the world. And then there was this huge potluck that most of us couldn't participate in because, again, due to hygiene reasons, most Americans would get sick. So there was a special meal for us. And then the huge banquet for everybody else. And we had to make sure that we didn't take from their food, right? And that was such an interesting thing because they had such a huge variety of food, but we could only have a little bit. But again, the reason made sense. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying it was funny. And then after that, we had to walk back all the way to home base, right? Which was at a church, but not the church we were at. We were at the church we had just built. And it was very hot and humid that day. I was dripping in sweat. So we start walking, and one of the locals, I believe he was the head elder, he stops in a pickup truck, honks his horn, and they're like, get on, I'll take you to the church. And when we see there's about 20 of us. And the pickup truck ain't gonna hold all of us. So it became an all-out war. All of us running to get on the pickup truck. And, first come, first serve. We did it, and we get in there. I remember some climbing, hands were everywhere, people trying to pull themselves up by grabbing onto me and whatever. And we all get packed, and we all had this huge, this amazing ride on the back of a pickup truck where I took my camera and I recorded the view. And that was just so amazing, so fun. What else can I share? The morning we had to leave, it was a somber morning. I believe we had breakfast. Yeah, we had breakfast in the jungle before leaving. We woke up at like 3 a.m, and we get on the bus for another very long ride. And it was a weird feeling. Like it was, we're tired, we're leaving this place. But it didn't really sink in my head that we were leaving, right? So from there, we drive all the way to the city where we ended up having lunch at Papa John's Pizza. And let me tell you, After a whole week of eating after 2 whole weeks of eating the same food, Papa John's pizza was like heaven. Like, oh, amazing. Then we went to the volcano, which I already covered, and it's when we're leaving the volcano that it sinks, weighs in on me that we're leaving. This is the last time we have together, and we're never going to be together again. And that's when I started getting kind of sad, but it was fine. From there, we went to the hotel where we were going to spend the night. And it wasn't an amazing hotel, but it was very beautiful considering what we had just been this past few weeks. And they had a toilet, which, and they had a shower, which again, there was the little things that you miss being back in civilization. Then for our last meal, we go to a local pizza place that wasn't Papa John's. And, I remember when we were leaving the pizza place, everybody starts singing, "We're off to see the Wizard, the Wonderful Wizard of Oz," and we were all marching and doing the walk. And then on top of the roof of the hotel, we had the last service together, and my watch beeped, and I remember looking at it, and I'm like, oh, look at that, 24 hours from now, I'm going to be back home. So yeah, after the service ends, I start feeling really sad. So I leave to go to sleep early. And yeah, when I woke up the next morning, half the group had already been shipped out. So we had a breakfast provided by the hotel, which was, if you guessed it, white rice, black beans, fried cheese. But this time it came with a poached egg. So yeah. And then out of the half of us that were left, only 6 of us were being shipped out together. So we get on the van that brings us to the airport, and we fly back to the States. And then from there, from Miami, we fly back to Connecticut. And I arrived home at midnight. And I remember the next day, I decided I was going to walk to the grocery store to buy food that I was craving. So as I'm walking there, right, for 2 whole weeks, I was surrounded by 31 strangers, and I couldn't escape it. So as I'm walking to the grocery store, that's when I feel like someone is behind me, and I look back, and it was just empty. There wasn't a car, there wasn't anything. It was like deafening silence, and that's when I realized I was back home, and my adventure was over. I know that some people might feel like this really isn't for them, and if it's not, I respect it, but I definitely would say consider going. It is an experience that you guys otherwise are not going to take, and you need to have this sense of adventure and try new things, and it was a blessing. Prior to going on this trip, I remember reading the book of Acts and how Paul did all of his mission, traveling, and I thought it was going to be something like that, but it really wasn't. It was more like camp in the real outdoors. And if you like camp, consider it. And even if you don't like camp, it was truly a blessing. And so here I put this as decoration. It's a camp plate. That's how we would dry them. We would wash them in like a little basin and then hang them out to dry. I have the picture of the team. I have the songbook. This is the actual plate combo that I used while I was over there. The DVD containing the Maranatha Mission Stories episode on us, the Bible that the group sank, the photo album, and the cacao wooden sculptures, and also the hat. And I'm wearing the shirt, of course. And so, why am I sharing all of this? God is good, and my whole life I wanted to go on a mission trip, but I knew that my family couldn't afford it. This trip I went pretty much out of my own pocket. When my church found out, they helped, and I'm very grateful for that. But yeah, it was mainly done out of my own pocket, and I was able to do something that, again, I never had experienced. I know many people are fortunate enough to go every year. And if you do, then great. But I would definitely recommend everybody to try something like this at least once in your life. It is amazing, and again, I couldn't stop smiling for days after I got back home. So with that said, that was my experience with Maranatha Volunteers International. I did their 2 week trip. It was the Collegiate Project, which doesn't exist anymore, but they still have Ultimate Workout, which is similar. So if you're a teenager, consider going that. I recommend it. Just understand that there's always danger when you're traveling. Death is possible. And I know that scares many people, but it is possible. Just take that in mind, but have a sense of adventure. And with that said, I believe I've been talking for 45 minutes. So this was a much longer one than last week. So yeah, thank you everybody for watching. And this is this week's Thursday Talk episode. See you next time. Bye. And goodbye.